Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Elias. I'm doing a stream for the first time in kind of a long time. I'm going to be doing some wish listing for what I'm hoping to see in the upcoming Battlescroll. It should be coming sometime in the next few weeks, maybe month, probably less than that. Who knows exactly? Always a little variable, but the regularly scheduled updates to balance changes. I think we're in a pretty exciting time, but also kind of a weird time. There's been a whole bunch of like new strong books that have come out that have kind of shaken up a lot of things, but also we're like heading to the end of AGHB. So like there's a lot of things that are going to be changing very soon after this battle scroll as well in significant ways. But I think this is going to be like a really important shift. I think there's a lot of opportunities for what Games Workshop could do with the game and the meta right now, and there's certain things I think could be big mistakes. Um, so I have a lot of hopes for what could be coming up here. And today I'm going to be going over basically what I would like to see for all the Order armies. This is the biggest faction, so it's going to be the longest of these videos, but I'm going to do all four. Hopefully all within the next few days, or this week at least. And I'm going to post it up online for people to look at, and hope to get you guys' opinions on everything like that. I love to hear people have to say about it and debate about it. It's fun to get all heated about it. Who knows what's going to happen, but these are things I would like to see. Starting off here, I'm just going to give like some general thoughts about the game, where it's at, what I think is a problem, what I think is great. So right now, I think most of the game is quite well balanced in a way, but there's a lot of problems with like a lot of the older books or the indexes that like have just a lot of units that basically just don't do anything. There's a lot of sub factions and artifacts and stuff like that that just feel like wildly imbalanced. And a lot of that has to do with just like fourth edition, a lot of major changes how the game works, and so some things are overestimated, some things underestimated. And these latest books that have come out, they've been pretty dominant. So if we look at like some of these are just overviews, but we'll be looking at them more closely in a second. Some of these newer books that are coming out, like Maggotkin and Bone Reaper, some of these they're very new, so some of them don't really have stats yet, but although we're concerned they're going to be super strong. And the interesting thing about them is I actually think that a lot of the strengths that are showing up, like they're very, very strong, but I actually don't think that they feel bad to play against. They feel very thematic, they feel very fun, they're just too strong in comparison to a lot of the other armies. I think that's more of a problem with a lot of the book coming before this certain turning point. Just kind of need some help, more so than these guys need to be brought down. So I'm hoping to see a lot more buffs than nerfs because of this, because I think some of them do need to be nerfed, of course, and all that, but you need a lot more buffs. So I'm kind of like coming at this from an approach of like what I think would be best for the overall game, rather than trying to hammer down certain things. If you look at kind of like faction popularity, it's sort of an important way to view and contextualize how people are actually experiencing the game. Like obviously Stormcast Eternals is always going to be popular because it's like an intro army. Same with like Slave of the Dark, it's like very iconic. It's always going to be popular even when it's bad. But beyond that, it's even more popular than that because it's a really fun army to play right now. It's got a lot of cool tricks, but it still has some balance issues. Some things are too strong, some things are too weak, but it plays in a fun way, whereas like Hellspace of Hashut, it's a pretty new army, should be a lot of hype around it, but a lot of people feel that it's not really living up to the gameplay story they were hoping to get from it. Today I'm only going to go over order, but a lot of these I think I have some pretty well thought out fixes. So with my fixes, I'm definitely looking at external balance and internal balance. If you're not familiar with those terms, external balance means balance as compared to other armies. Internal balance is things within the book and how they weigh up against each other, how attractive different options, sub-factions, units don't see enough play or see too much play, etc. Trying to fix both of those, ideally. I personally care more about internal balance than I do about external balance. I think for one, it's a lot easier to actually manage and fix, and I think that like even when your army's bad, if every single unit feels like vaguely viable, but your like win rate's a little bit below average, I'd rather have a book where like every single unit feels good, but the win rate's like 48%, than a book that's like got a 55% win rate with one build that uses like 3 units and everything else sucks. Like I think it's just more fun that way. So I tend to push more for internal balance as my priority overall. So I'm just going to get that out of the way, and let's just jump right into it. I'm going to start off with Cities of Sigmar. Now, Cities of Sigmar has had a lot of problems in general since the book has come out, even in the last edition, and that's partially due with it using a lot of old models, and they're currently going through like a massive overhaul refresh. So a lot of the problems with it I don't think are super easy to fix, and they're pretty much just like waiting for their book, and a bunch of units I'm pretty sure are going to get replaced. And they just, because they just don't really like, the problem with cities is not necessarily like points, it's that like their units don't really fit how the game plays, because a lot of them are coming from Warhammer Fantasy or the very early days of this, and like they don't really quite fit in how the texture of the game. So with that in mind, there is some clear balance issues. So we're going to go look over this faction win rates issue. City of Sigmar's all the way down at 42.7%. There is kind of a big discrepancy between really good players and average players there, which I didn't put on this screen, but like I did look into it, and like really good players can succeed with Cities of Sigmar. The average player is having a miserable time, and there's a lot of reasons for that. I think that like for a while the cannons build was very, very strong, but it's just like the most unfun way to play possible, and unfortunately a lot of their roster feels like underwhelming. And you could make cannons really interesting, but it pretty much just boiled down to just one build, and it was very like hit or miss. Good matchups or good maps, and you just auto won, and bad matchups, just auto loss, and everything else just kind of felt like you're climbing uphill. So if you look at some of these units that people are taking, Wilder Hunters seem to be doing really well. I mean, these are kind of small sample sizes for some of these units, so like I'm not really worried about Executioners at 56% because it's 51 games. Like it's a couple games in one direction or another. They're about balanced. Kind of same with Wildercore Hunters, although I do think they're one of the better units in the book. If you look at some of the ones that are really, really struggling, Steel Helms and Fusiliers, plus a lot of their support pieces, so like the Warforger, definitely not doing great. The Cavalier Marshal, I'm a little bit surprised to see it that low. It does feel like a good unit. I would have expected it to be higher than that if I didn't know otherwise. But I think it's kind of coming all from the same place. They're all kind of dealing with the same problem, which is that certain types of builds and fighting fair with this army is kind of bad. Like the things that are succeeding is Free Guild Command Corps spam, which is just like everyone, that hurts everyone's soul. We're all like, that doesn't feel right. Like it shouldn't work that way, because their Battlescroll is really, really good. Their War Scroll, I mean, and they have too many abilities and too many stats, and it's kind of strange. So I have some theories as to how to fix this, which I'm going to get into right now on this next slide. I just do think there's a bit of a problem where some of it you just can't fix. Like they really just need their book to come out, which from what I hear is coming out soon. I mean, I don't know for sure, but and it should come with a whole bunch more models, just like the last refresh where they got like a bunch of new War Scrolls and it really like improved the feel of the army. I think that'll be the case again. So here's kind of what I do as like a temporary fix. It's not super exciting, but like all their sub-factions were pretty well balanced against each other, etc. But I do think that Talia Vedra and the Free Guild Marshal and Griffin are both a little bit overcosted. I wish their War Scrolls were just slightly better rather than being cheaper, but it is what it is for now. Them getting cheaper, I think, has a little bit of a cascading effect where builds that feature them, like they're having Steel Helms, etc., do a little bit better accordingly. Steel Helms going down to 10, like Steel Helms like the definition of an 80-point unit. And I think at 80 points it started to get pretty appealing actually. They hold objectives really well at that, and you have like reinforcing them at 160 is like they're suddenly like that's actually pretty efficient. They probably could do with like certain other small buffs on some small heroes and stuff like that, but I forgot to include this, but I should have put Command Corps needs to just be unique. Straight up. Just make it unique. Like, I don't know why that unit isn't unique. Add that keyword, and then you can buff a lot of other things. It should have been in there, but apparently I didn't type it out. The Black Dragon and Sorceress of Black Dragon, I think should go down 30 points each. I'm not sure that makes them good anyway, but it certainly makes them more exciting. And when you have the Talia Vedra, Free Guild Marshal, Black Dragon, and Sorceress of Black Dragon all going down 20 to 30 points, You get some more appealing, like aggressive fighty builds that kind of look a little bit better. There's probably some elves and dwarf units that could do some small point adjustments. But like as I put here, like mid refresh, like I think mostly those units are going to be cycling out for revamped, rebuilt, reoriented units, and so I really am not super interested in like fine tuning those units that are probably going to rotate, probably basically legended and get replaced by something way cooler. So this one's kind of more of a wait, but this I think will get some sparks moving, make them do a little bit better for a while as we wait for that book to come in. Dog, new books coming in like right now, basically. So I'm not going to talk about them, but it looks pretty exciting. I think we can all agree about that. So Fire Slayers. Fire Slayers have a number of problems. For one, a lot of people don't like them because all their sculpts look the same. It's really hard to tell units apart. They're very like monothematic. It feels like there's only basically like 3 units. There's a guy on top of Magmadroth, and then there's Berserkers, and then there's random foot heroes all the same. There's technically a lot more than that, but that's how it feels when you play them and look at them, both as them and against them, and that's kind of annoying. But also, like, I think the Games Workshop kind of underestimated how important, like, how many points, basically, they thought they'd have to spend a lot more points on, like, fighty infantry. And you've seen this, like, across the board with, like, a lot of these, like, grindier, more fair fighting armies. And they're appointed like slightly cheaper than the like super fast, tricksy, high damage armies, but they really should have been significantly cheaper. Like if you want someone to be able to grind out a fight, but they only move 4 inches, they better be hella cheaper than the opponent is, right? Like you should have to be fighting an uphill battle to kill them, and you probably should be able to, but you have to move around them if you're a fast army. You know what I mean? Whereas like for a long time we've been dealing with this problem where like you could build a tank army that's like super durable, everything defensive buffs, and then the army that's like fast can come in and still kill you. That's still getting better and better as they've adjusted points down. And a lot of these support characters were like way too expensive for what they were doing. So going into this a little farther, Fire Slayers not doing good. 45% is not great. But I actually think their win rate is lower than that, as I'll get to right here. So if you look at these units, there's a huge discrepancy. Magmadroth's good, everything else terrible. And you look at these, there's only 2 formations being taken, and one of them is 18% lower than the Scales of Volcatrix, and then the other ones are so much worse they're not even being taken. So that is a massive drop. And if you look at some of these like discrepancies in win rates, it's pretty huge. Magmadroths are weird. So I'm gonna just spoiler alert a little bit. I did not do any changes for Magmadroth points, because Magmadroths are like, unfortunately, a strange ballast point where like if they get slightly better, they become oppressive, and they're really fucking hard to balance because they kind of wrote them in a weird way where they just hit insanely hard. If you have like one more unit, they table everybody, but then if you don't, they lose a lot of their games because they're like it's so like they're so powerful per unit that minus or plus a little bit, shaving one thing off is something the army doesn't get there. It's sort of an interesting thing, but I'm a little bit cautious with them. But I decided what I wanted to accomplish in these changes that I put in here is to significantly close the gap. They obviously need a new book, like for 4th edition, and need some changes and like that sort of stuff, of course. But these are the changes I can do now. I don't expect a book for a while, and I think you could probably do more than I did here. But I think it's a decent starting point. And I'll talk about some things I thought about, but like these are changes I would for sure make. So first of all, the Rune Master is like 190 points for a 4-inch moving. Yes, he's a double prayer and he's good, but like it's one of those things where like orcs have a similar problem where it's like movement is the best stat to have in the game, and if you have 4 movement and a bad save, like you need to be a lot cheaper for that. I think he could probably go down maybe another 10 than that even. But a 20-point drop is at least something. And the Rune Father, I think, can go down 10. He's actually quite good. His ability is quite good, but it's I feel like it could become a problem if you have several of them or whatever, and also it's like not really that impactful. The Battlesmith just doesn't really do anything. He's 100 points, and I think he could go down to 70. This is a pretty significant drop down there, and I'm not sure he would see play. It's kind of weird, but you know, it is what it is. Flame Seekers, like the Vulcan Flame Seekers, I think they're quite good. But like they're quite good in the sense where they're like slightly better than a lot of bad options. So I still think they can go down. And I didn't type this, but the Volkite Berserkers with shields, I think could definitely drop. Those with paired hand axes are already quite cheap. And so I have some friends who play Fire Slayers and stuff like that. It's another one of those problems where like critical mass, like when they hit a certain level of cheapness, you could run too many. Like currently the hand axe ones are 120, the extra attack ones, and the Berserkers with shields are 140. The shields are better overall, but like when you can run, 100 of them for 1,200 points, it does kind of become a problem. So I don't know if that's necessarily the fix. I do think the Auric Berserkers, which apparently didn't put here, but the shooting ones should go down 10 points as well. And I think the Ashcloud Rune, it is really good, but I think it should be free. I think it enables these infantry lists to do a lot better, and they have a lot more tools. And they can win some of those matchups they've previously found quite challenging. Same thing with the shields going down a little bit. These changes together, it should be able to drop those infantry lists by actually a pretty significant amount to the point where they're able to afford an extra thing. And you can do some really cheap regiment stuff with the Battlesmith. You can do some interesting tools. The Battlesmith still kind of sucks. Like he just needs a rework, but it is what it is. You can start doing some interesting stuff and fitting an extra unit. And sometimes an extra unit is enough for these infantry armies to come out on top. And sometimes like an extra 70, 80 points does matter. I don't know if this will actually fix the problems, but unfortunately the way it's currently written, Fire Slayers are they have a critical mass issue. The Magma Droths get too oppressive when you can fit one more of them in a list than you currently can, but are too weak when you can't. The infantry, when they hit a certain point of raw math, it's like kind of crazy, but then they kind of suck otherwise. So I think we're mostly waiting for updates. They have some cool rules, but like some of their combat profiles are sort of strange. And I think they're also a little bit suffering from a bit of difficulty with this GHB and scoring battle tactics well. There's not really a lot of ones that they want to do, and the way they play is like not super rewarded for that. But hopefully with some of these changes, you can also like play a little bit more mixed arms. You can play like an infantry base with like a couple Magma Droths, like one or two, and you sort of shaving the infantry balls points costs down by like 50 to 60 points for that part of your army. Like you brought a Rune Master and 20 Volkite Berserkers and a Flame Seeker, you already saved like 50 points right there. Runefather would probably be there, so that's 60 points down. Like it adds up and lets you be more flexible with your points. I don't know if it'd be enough, but it's a help at least. And the shooting Berserkers should also go down 10. Alright, Idneth. Here's an army I actually play pretty substantially. I was ranked number 1 Idneth for 2 years, and so it's one I have a lot of opinions on. I think Idneth is in a very sorry state, but it's in a very interesting version of a sorry state. So if you actually look at their win rate, it's quite high, 54.6. I think that is somewhat deceptive, and I'll get into that. If you look at some of their popularity, of their sub-factions, you'll see only 2 sub-factions see any play out of 6. Technically, people played like 2 games with some of the other ones, but it's pretty much non-existent except for those 2. And that's because the book is very overcosted for everything that it does. Most of the war scrolls like should drop significantly, but there's two sub factions that are like absurdly powerful and carry the faction on their backs. So Aether Predators is the Shark sub faction. I consider Sharks to be essentially an unplayable model. They're at least 20 points overcosted, and probably more than that, probably closer to 40 points overcosted per Shark. And this sub faction is so strong and so brokenly good that it takes playing at least 3 or 4 of them, and sometimes more than that, while you're playing like hella Sharks, a unit that is unplayably bad. It could basically be a blank war scroll. And Aether Predators would still be at a winning rate, because it just basically lets you respawn all of your Sharks off table edges during both players' turns. And it's really obnoxious. And it's not fun to play as or against. Like, it's a pretty miserable experience for both players. The Sharks player gets to have all their models die, kill almost nothing, and then just win the game anyway. And the opponent basically loses no matter what they do. In most cases, like, it just doesn't, and there's not really a lot of interacting. The opponent just runs away the entire time, scoring points. It's like, it's just miserable. And Beastmasters gives all your companions +1 to hit, which basically that lets them function. Without it, like, eels do nothing, sharks do nothing, your turtle kind of sucks. Like, everything is balanced as if it always had that, and none of your buffs affect your mounts, and like your mounts are most of your damage. There's a lot of problems with that in the book, but they're balanced as if you always have Akkelian Beastmasters. So you can't really play most of the models in the army in any other sub-faction. Also, this other problem where, like, Namarti do nothing. And the units that could make them good are very overcosted. Like, Eidolon of the Storm is, in my opinion, massively overcosted. He gets +1 to wound and or around to non-mounts, which could make Thralls, like, decent. But then he's, like, overcosted, and their War Scrolls alone are kind of bad, so you can't really play them. And then Volturnos is kind of same deal. He's got a great buff for your, like, Thralls and such. He's also pretty good with Morsar Guard, but he's also very overcosted. He's 230 points, and I think he'd be okay at 200. So going into that, here's some of the changes. This is kind of bold choices here, but Akkelian Beastmasters, I think, should go up 40 points. It's already +20. I think it should be a 60-point sub-faction. Not because I think Akkelian Beastmaster lists are too strong. Actually, I think overall these changes would make Beastmaster points probably go down a little bit. It's that unless they do something drastic like this, and I might even go higher. I'd do like +50 or +60 compared to where it is, which would, like, right now that would put it +60. I would be comfortable at being +80. And then a bunch of these changes happening, because then it lets you have more flexibility in how you actually build the army, and everything else can basically drop accordingly. So if all the eels and the turtles and the sharks drop in points, a lot of the heroes drop in points, those lists actually probably go down or stay about the same, but there's other ways to now build the army. Aether Predators +80, so that puts you 100-point sub-faction. And that might sound crazy, but if sharks go down 20 points, then that sub-faction became free. But now sharks can potentially be played in other sub-factions. They might see fringe use as, like, a utility piece. They still wouldn't even be good. Like, sharks would be, like, okay, as, like, a 1-of or maybe a 2-of in some lists to be, like, annoying flanking pieces that kind of disrupt the opponent a little bit. But, like, you know, they were not really a threat. Like, the problem with Aether Predators is not actually even the sharks. Like, people are playing, like, 3 sharks in Aether Predators because they get 3 units back from the table, but they're so terrible they don't want to play more than that. And, like, the worst ways to build Aether Predators is by actually spamming sharks, because sharks suck. Even though it's the shark sub-faction. So, like, I think them dropping by 20 is a good starting point to make them, like, maybe you'll see them in other builds. Eidolon Storm Volturnus going down 30 does make certain Beastmaster builds, when you try to be more aggressive, better. And that's not really how people have been playing them. So you can now play, like, a more damage-oriented Idoneth build, which people kind of hope. Form Mora, I don't even think is, like, good. And I'm surprised it costs 20 points. like if it was free, I wouldn't play it in 90% of my lists, and like it's just I don't know why it costs points. Icon of the Storm is definitely the best unit in the book. He's very, very good. I think at plus 20 he would still be incredible. Still be one of the best units in the book, but would be a little bit more fairly priced for what he's doing. I think he's one of those units that's carrying the faction on the back because he gives him the giant AoE of retreat and charge, and then he fights really good, and he's 120 points. So he takes away a lot of the counterplay for your opponents. So if he costs more, then you're like maybe not bringing him, and so there's more weaknesses to the army, and it creates a more interesting game for you and your opponent. Morsar Guard and Turtle going down 10. Turtle, it's not huge, but just kind of like fixes some stuff. But also if you want to play like a higher degree of eels with like Storm and Volturnos, that's getting cheaper. Even if you play the Beastmasters, those together end up making it cost a little bit less, which balances things out. Reavers, Thralls, and Saki Thralls all need to drop. I'm sure none of you guys have played against the Thralls list in like a year or two at least. Like they're bad. I'm not sure that even makes it viable. But Isle of the Storm and Volturnos going down 30 each, and then Thralls going down 10. Like you could, and Reavers going down 10. You could easily shave like 100 plus points off of it, and you start hitting this critical mass thing, which is not great. Like it's not really like ideal. Because like it's not spamming units never feels great, but you know you could also more easily throw them into screens in armies, like so they have more of a use there. Or like Reaver's a utility shooting unit we'll see more often thrown around, stuff like that, and that's kind of more where it'd be interesting. I don't think there's really a good way to overcome the fact that they're a 5-up save unit that has 2 attacks, 3s and 4s, rend 1, damage 1. That's just not good, you know. They just die and don't kill anything. One thing that I think could be an interesting change is just make it so that Reavers and Thralls move the same amount. And I'm not going to change that. That's why I didn't put it here. But it's weird that, like, Thralls are slower than the people who they're protecting. But yeah, I think these changes would make it much more interesting Idoneth gameplay in Army. Alright, next we're going on to KO. Everyone's least favorite army. They're a really cool thematic army, but they've consistently been designed in this way that I think is quite miserable. But this new book that came out, I think, has a lot of really fun and interactive rules. It makes for interactive games in many ways, but they for some reason came out just insanely cheap. Like everyone was like, "What the hell is going on?" And they keep increasing their points, but they still just have. It always feels like they have too many units on the table, and like the units hit really hard. And like the problem is like you catch up to them, and they're like, "Yeah, but all my units are out-costed, so I still have a bunch of dudes, and catching me doesn't necessarily earn you that much." So I was trying to adjust some of these things. So even after like 4 nerfs, Character Overlord is still at a 54% win rate. And this is, in my opinion, in a GHB that really holds them back quite a bit. Like if it gets lower elo players, I bet their win rate is way higher than this. Because if people don't know how to use like obscuring properly and aren't cautious and don't know how to zone out things properly, they're pretty brutal. And if we get into some of these unit win rates, some of these units are pretty crazy. Engine Riggers, like the War Scroll is good, but the War Scroll is not even a problem. It's the fact that they're like 110 points, and in any other army, there's no way in hell they'd be 110 points. Like. And a lot of these have already been nerfed, and you're just like, what is going on? I think Brock Grugnisson is one of the big problems. He basically lets the army cheat, for lack of a better way to describe it. Like, he basically lets them break the sort of limitations they would otherwise have. And so he's currently pretty expensive, but, like, even with points increases, I think that he would still see heavy play. And I think the Ironclad is partially really good because engine riggers are so undercosted, and repairing it becomes like free. And the frigate is partially really good because engine riggers and sky wardens are a little bit undercosted, and they're both really good because Brock Grugnisson is too good. So sort of a like tree of effects that interact with each other. There's basically nothing bad in the army, but this is kind of what I would change. It's pretty simple. Brock goes up 20. Chemist goes up 10, which is like fine. Engine Riggers up 20, so they're 130. Like 20 sounds like a lot, but like any other army for an effect like that would be happy to pay that price. At 130 for them, and Skywarden's going up a 10. It's like they'll be fine, but like it's one of those things where like if you can just get rid of one unit from a KO list, it starts to feel more manageable. So I had this like knife's edge situation where like it's high risk, high reward, whereas right now it's not enough risk of too many units. I like going up 20, just kind of. I don't think these changes would like break the back KO by any means. I think it just bring it right gently into line. Like all their sub factions are about as good as each other. I don't necessarily think their items are a problem, really. Like, they're all kind of interesting. I think these changes would just basically slot them wherever they should be. They're pretty close now. I don't think this would break their back or anything like that. I don't really want them to be bad. Just high risk, high reward. All right, going into Seraphon. Seraphon are in a pretty miserable place. The stats have been kind of gratifying me in a way because I've been arguing for a long time that like so they're low win rate, but I've been arguing for a long time that Lord Croak is terrible, and I'm in a way glad to see the stats reflect that. It's sad, but like people keep telling me, like everyone wants to play Lord Croak, and I'm like, he's bad. It's so many points, like, and your army just doesn't do anything. But there's a lot of units that they kind of suck in this army. Like, most of the fairways to play are pretty darn weak, and like people are only winning with them because they're like super dedicated fans. They're pretty weak. They really do need a new book, but I think there are some things that could make a lot of stuff more interesting, more exciting. Some of their points changes, I have a couple rules changes in here that I would like to see implemented that I think would help a lot of people get more excited. Even though they're kind of small things, they do add up. So, first of all, the Old Blood, he's 90 points, make him 80. He's cheap, whatever. And Lord Croak down 30, because he's just too expensive. At 410, I still think he's okay. He's expensive and he's vulnerable, you know. But it does make it better. And Soros Warrior's down 10. There's other books that have like better units at the same cost or cheaper with better support pieces. I don't think anyone's thinking Soros Warriors are broken. Like, they're very do nothing, you know. If you're winning with them, it's kind of in spite of them. Agronal Lancers, I think, are one of those units that get people excited, but they're supposed to be this like grindy cavalry unit, which is really interesting. It's like heavy cavalry unit. The problem with that is that if you want to be a grindy army, you have to be more efficient than your opponent. And right now, they're just not. The War Scroll is good. They're just not more efficient than what they're fighting. And you have to be more efficient if you want to have a grindy fight. If you're explosive, you can get around efficiency. You can kind of negate small mathematical edges. But them, if they were cheaper, you get a larger critical mass, and then you can really start building up their stats and like running 6 blocks, and it's like not as egregiously expensive, and it's kind of interesting. You start getting like more combat-oriented Seraphon lists that can play more aggressively while still being fair. I don't think it'd be a problem. Like, even if you ran like 3 units of 6, that is 120 points off, but like I don't see that being a problem. Even with that spammy level of building them like that. And they don't really have like a issue where like they don't have like chain activating all of them together. They don't have like things like that. So I don't think they're really in high degree of risk of getting a problem. I think both the Bastillodons should go down 20, which is scary to me in some ways because Bastillodons are very annoying, but their win rates are quite low and they don't do a lot of damage. And their bad matchups for them are so bad. In good matchups, they feel great. When someone has no mortal wound access and low rend, you're like, yep, these guys won't ever die. But as soon as someone does, they die very quickly, and they're kind of expensive. They're very slow, kind of low damage output. So I think them going cheaper, 20 might be overkill, but given their win rate, we'll see. And then removing the once per army from Stegadon rampages, I think could be really interesting. The War Scroll needs help, but if you do all their cool little charging effects, and you can do on multiple units, you could be clever and do annoying plays with them, but then it's like not really at risk of being a problem because like their stats are kind of bad. Like even if a Stegadon, if there's multiple Stegadons, you do D3 mortals, and you get to move them 2d6, you get annoying places. They're very swingy. They don't hit crazy hard. Like, they don't hit terribly, but it's certainly not great. And so, like, even if they sneak into annoying places, like, they're going to instantly delete their target. It's, like, super risky, but it'd be a fun thing for both players. And you can do, like, multiple instances of D3 wounds, and it gives them a lot more tools. Like, I don't think you necessarily need to get cheaper. They just need to be a little bit better. I think those combined can make dinosaur builds more engaging, where you have, like, cheaper Bastillodons and you get more interesting access to abilities. I think it's going to add up to be something interesting. And a lot of times dinosaurs like to run Lancers as well, so they're saving some points here and there, and I think that will help. And at minimum, it'll make the games more exciting, and it'll make the army feel more exciting to play. And it should push up their win rate a bit. How much is hard to say, but I think it'll help. I think it'll make a noticeable difference to have these changes. So, moving on, we got Stormcast. Stormcast is interesting. A lot of people feel like Stormcast is S tier, but its win rate is fine. It's a 49%. I think that has a lot more to do with basically popularity. It's got a lot of players, and specifically a lot of new players. So its win rate is going to be lower than its actual power potential. That being said, there's a lot of things in Stormcast that really just don't cut it. There's a lot of war scrolls that really I wish we could just rework them entirely. They just have, like, basically no text, just don't do anything. It's very boring. And the ones that are good are, like, very good. Some of these stats surprised me, though. Vanguard Paladors and Star Strike Javelins, I always thought were quite good, but 60% is surprising to me. I would have guessed lower. I'm not surprised by Iridan the Witness, though. This is soggy. For some reason, it doesn't separate them, but the Scourge of Giran Iridan is an incredible unit. Turns out ignoring your opponent's abilities on a rerollable 3+ is quite good. The little kickflip is really good. He fights well. He's pretty efficient. He's a really good unit. Celsin Prime is another one that really surprised me, because I would have, if I hadn't looked at these stats, I would have considered him to be very bad. But apparently I'm wrong on that one. Or people have just been getting lucky with it. Who knows? But there's a lot of... The rest of the army is, like, looking kind of middle of the road, but I think that's not necessarily true. I think a lot of these units are above average. I will say, though, some of it is, like, an issue with, like, Iridan being super, super good and kind of helping the other units get propped up. Some of the threats being a little too good. Like, it doesn't... I don't necessarily think Storm Coven is a problem. But Storm Coven is usually also in a list with a bunch of other stuff that's really good. And they're very nice utility pieces. So it's kind of... There's a lot of stuff like that. Like, I think Prosecutors are really strong, but their win rate's at 50%. But then you look at the bottom, and you got these, like, Dracothian Guard Concussors, Stormstrike Chariots, Stormstrike Guards, Nitrogen... Their, like, win rates are very low. Surprisingly low. Like, I thought Stormstrike Guard are pretty good. They are a little bit inefficient. It might just be that they're slightly outclassed, and we're having one of those situations where, like, Vanguard Paladors are a little bit better, so the really, really good players are playing Vanguard Paladors. And they're not playing Stormstrike Guard because they're just a little bit... Like, so it's like the good players are gravitating to the small edge. There's some of that going on, I think, here. So here's what I would change. Soggy Iridan going up 30 points. He's in, like so many lists. He's so strong. And he enables so many things. And I think you kind of have to make some things go up. Vanguard Paladors, plus 10. They're at a very fine balance point. They're very expensive. And that makes it high risk, high reward. But I think they should stand to go up a little bit. And Questor Soulsworn going up by 20. Their win rate is not that high, but I think it's deceptive. They're extremely good. And if you talk to any high-level Stormcast player, they'll tell you Questor Soulsworn are very, very good. And it's shockingly cheap for what they do. They're just too efficient. So I think that kind of fixes that. But I also wanted to make, like, more things be on the similar level of power. Because I was talking about how, like, the high-level players are taking things to small edges. I think that some of these changes here could help reorient those changes just a little bit. I think Andrasta could go down 30 points. I think she'd be a pretty enticing option at 260. Really good in some matchups. In other matchups, but, like, not bad. At 290, she's like too bad in her bad matchups to be worth playing. but she's not that far off. But she's a single model at 290. Is like maybe minus 20 might even just be good enough. Like she's already dropped a few times, but she's like right kind of on that line, and I think she'd be a really enticing option at like the 270, 260 mark. Knight Judicator, he's only 120 and his win rate's terrible, but I think that's partially because a lot of the players who are playing high level are playing very like aggressive or spamming Soulsworn. And so he's like, kind of popular with the good players as opposed to just being like bad, but he isn't great. So dropping 10 helps. Knight Quester dropping 10. It's just like a Knight Azor dropping 10. So it's not like huge changes, but it kind of helps close the gaps a little bit. Cronus dropping 20. I don't know if that'd be enough. Praetor should probably also go down 10 if that was going to be the case. Cronus is a lot of points for not having a ward save. He dies all the time a little bit too easily, but like when he doesn't die, he's super strong, and like if you use him really well, he is still quite good, but he's not like, he does need a little bit of help. And I think just opening a little bit more space and list with him, combined with some of these other changes, I think could be interesting. Vanguard Hunters, I've never seen someone put them on the table, and I think their war scroll is pretty good, but I think they're just a little bit inefficient. So Gryph-hounds I think are great actually, but they should be cheap. Like them being at 90 instead of 80 is like, they really are an 80 point unit, maybe even 70. But they have a good war, so they do a cool thing. It's just that like they fight terribly and die really easily and don't control objectives well, so like they have to be cheap. Dracothian Guard in general should be a little bit cheaper. It's tricky with them, and that's what I was talking about, like with the Magma Dross is kind of a similar issue where like units like this, it's kind of tricky. I think they need to go down a little bit, but I think their low win rate is more of a case of them being slightly outclassed by the Paladors, and so the really good players have been taking Paladors instead, but they could use a little bit of help. I don't think their win rate is necessarily reflective of their power level, in my personal opinion. I might be wrong on that. Some other small changes I think I'd like to see is like Lord Celestins being able to take basically anything in their regiments. Right now they're kind of limited, which is weird because they're a Lord Celestin. You know, they should really be able to take a lot of stuff, and they don't really have a good role in the army, so them going down a little bit more in points and then being able to take anything gives them like at least like a reason you take them, which I think is something that some of the war scrolls struggle with in this army. And even though they purged a whole bunch, they still have too many war scrolls. And then the concussors, I think they have like a once per turn army ability of like when they charge on a 3-up, they can make that unit not be able to spend commands that turn, which is like, that doesn't have to be once per turn army. That's fine. Like you could take that off. It'd be interesting. You can see people maybe bringing some MSU of them and being annoying with it. Like it'd be kind of interesting. They're certainly not a problem unit. They're pretty far from being a problem unit. So I think they could probably have that change. It probably could honestly drop 10 points as well, but at least that change would make them more exciting. So yeah, that's my thoughts on Stormcast. There's probably other changes they would need, but I think this would do some cool stuff. I think you'd see some interesting stuff going on. Might be some cool builds. Vanguard Hunters and Dracothian Guard. Vanguard Hunters and Gryph-hounds and Knight Judicators all going down together. You could see some interesting like shooting themed lists that are like light shooting that punish you in like weird control ways. This could be like more exciting ways to play. Because they kind of pile together. Like you have like Andrasta and a Knight Judicator and Vanguard Hunters and like another shooting unit, and then you have Gryph-hounds hanging around like screening and stuff like that, and people deep strike get to shoot with multiple units and like do interesting stuff like that. I think you could really like play into more interesting builds than just slamming in turn one. So I would love to see these sort of changes to it. Lastly, for order, we have Sylvaneth. Sylvaneth is a army that, in my opinion, got overbuffed. The Soggy changes were really, really strong, and they did a whole bunch of changes to them, and kept buffing and buffing and buffing them, in my opinion, too quickly, and you end up with a bit of a problem. The win rate is only 52.6%, but the thing to remember is that Sylvaneth are quite hard to play, and it's really easy for people to do stupid decisions and launch themselves in and kill themselves on people. So this is average across a bunch of players. In the hands of really good players, the win rate's definitely higher than this, but only in certain specific ways. And what you'll see right here with the some of these win rates of units, there's a pretty big discrepancy with some of these units. I'm surprised to see Alariel this low, because I think Alariel is actually very strong. I'm not sure why she's so low, because every time I've seen her, and she's like, I don't know, a lot of good players recommend her very strongly. Her ability does annoy me, though. Like, it should be a once per game CP ability rather than a 4-up, which I didn't put in my thing, but I do think that they should change that, because right now with the 4-up to bring back any unit that died, when you roll it, the army's like unbeatable, and when you don't roll it, the army sucks when she's in it, and like that's kind of a bad feel for both players. I'd rather be a once per game CP. You can actually balance around that. I think that's why her win rate's so low, is because like the huge variance of that. But you can see a lot of these other units have some problems, and what you'll also notice, which isn't super obvious here, is that there's a lot of units that are not even on this list because they see no play. So, some changes I'd like to see. This looks like probably a lot, but there's a lot of things they're trying to accomplish here. So, Warsong Revenant, objectively too good. Going up plus 20 points, and Spellslinger going up plus 20 points, I think puts you right close to a balanced place. Like 230, 240 to me seems accurate, and you could play for just 220 if you don't want to put Spellslinger on him. So it's like kind of balance itself out. Soggy Drychip plus 20. I'm not sure about this one. That was the most I'm like not 100% sure if that's right to do. I do think she's really good. I think her spell is kind of making some of the Seekers and Lancers heavily outperform in certain situations. The winner's at 60%, but I don't think it's just them. I think it's the interaction with her and them is like a little bit stronger perhaps than they intended. So them going up by 10 and her going up by 20 makes that combo overall a little bit more expensive, but I think Seekers and Lancers are kind of fine when Soggy Dredge isn't buffing them. So I didn't want to put them up like a bunch, except that felt kind of like missing the mark a bit. Glamour Weave is a crazy artifact from the Soggy stuff that I think should cost like 20 points. Because like Dirthy with it is like kind of nuts, but Dirthy without it is like fine. Like he's strong, but he's fine. But like he goes from like B tier to S plus with one artifact, and it gets like oppressively good. This is kind of a problem, but it's going to be going with Soggy stuff, and I think their win rate will actually drop a lot with Soggy Leaves, which is unfortunate. But I did put some stuff in here trying to help with that. Also the Branch Witch is just a little bit too efficient. You don't really see people play Tree Lords and Tree Lord Ancients, the regular ones, so I dropped both of them by 20 here. I think that like the Tree Lord builds can be annoying, but they're not like problematic. I think they're fun for people. I think people enjoy playing a bunch of Tree Lords, because they don't hit very hard, and you're like super tanky, you're regenerating, and it's kind of annoying, but like it's not like oppressive. It's just like a fun way to play, in my opinion. And Lady of Vines dropping down 10. She doesn't see a lot of play. She's not super strong because the things that she's best with aren't very good. So I dropped Dryads by 10 as well. I think Dryads become kind of interesting at 80 points. I think they can start doing some interesting stuff, and they make some of the sub-factions, like the +1 rend on the charge for infantry, that are like, for them basically it kind of becomes interesting. And when they go down 10 points, Lady of Vines goes down, the Treelers go down a little bit, you can start playing these more defensive strategies, or like more subtle strategies with them, and it becomes efficient enough that it starts to work, as opposed to right now where it's like you're just like not quite getting there with it. Lastly, I think Free Spirits, which is the one that lets you pick a cavalry unit and give it run in charge, should we pick up to 3. Like right now, Belthanos is in like every single list, but I don't think he's like broken. I think he's actually pretty well balanced. The problem is that like if you wanted to play like bugs, like regular Seekers and Lancers as an army, you have to play him. If you want to, like, there's so many units that you have to play, where it's like now it gives you an access to a build that doesn't play him by just changing that thing. Because no one's ever going to play Free Spirits as it is, when you can just play Belthanos. But that change is kind of like, if you don't want to play Belthanos, you can play this. So I think that would be kind of interesting and open up some options. There's some other small things I thought about, but like a lot of it, like there's some soggy war scrolls I would love to see changes to and stuff like that. But I think this would bring a lot of things in line. I'm a little bit, I think maybe the Revenant overall with Spellsinger increases a bit heavy, but its win rate's at 60% right now on an army that has a big skill curve, and the better you are, the better it gets. So I think it's probably fine. And you just have to switch some things around, which I think are dropping basically. Soggy Dredge I also think might not need to go up plus 20, maybe just plus 10, but we'll see. Anyway, that is what I think should be done with the Order armies in this battle scroll. There's probably some stuff that I missed, like different battalion changes, which you could put in what units, like things like that, little subtle stuff. For armies that I don't play, sometimes that stuff is kind of like harder to know about. But if you guys have any thoughts on these, maybe you think I'm wrong about something or something I missed, please let me know, like the comments, et cetera, et cetera. I'm going to keep putting out these videos, so keep tuning in and checking them out, all right?